Extremes are easy. Moderation can be hard. Hey, I'm Lorelei, registered dietitian nutritionist. Welcome to my kitchen. So we're not going to be cooking today, but we are going to be talking about food, specifically how to eat or enjoy your food in moderation. So I feel like moderation is kind of one of those go-to terms for dietitians, as opposed to saying, well, you should cut out chocolate chip cookies or French fries or whatever. We like to say, well, you can enjoy them in moderation. But what does that mean, A? And B, is that even possible? How can you do that? If I have a handful of M&Ms, I'm just gonna eat the whole bag, and there's no way around that. So wouldn't it be better just to not eat any at all than it would be to try to eat a small portion? I think we do find situations where it's better just to cut something out, at least for a period of time, to kind of get out of the habit of doing it. But that doesn't mean that we should have to give up things that we actually enjoy and bring something good to our lives forever, just because sometimes it's difficult to control ourselves when we do eat them. So the idea is moderation. We want to be able to eat a reasonable portion of something without having it completely throw things off for us. We also want to be able to actually enjoy something that we're choosing to eat without feeling guilty because maybe it's not a super healthy food. But if it gives us pleasure and we can enjoy it without going over the edge, that's kind of the goal, in my opinion. But that said, moderation can be really hard, which is why I think people do go to the extremes. Either like, well, I can't control myself, so I'm just gonna eat that whole bag of chips and worry about it later. Or, I am not going to have a single chip because if I do, I will be out of control. Those are actually a little easier. They're finite, they're definable, they are clear-cut, but maybe not what we want in the long run. What if someone said to you, well, to really be healthy, you should never have another dessert again for the rest of your life? You would want to strangle them. So that's really not where we want to land. However, if you feel like you're just eating dessert like it's the only meal of the day, maybe you gotta start to think about whether that's working for you. So how do you find a way to make this work? I admit I'm not great always at moderation. Even as a dietitian, with all of the stuff that I know, I still do find myself sometimes sitting in front of the TV with a box of crackers or a bag of chips and just mindlessly eating. Yeah, I get the idea of moderation, but how? I'm gonna give you 10 tips for practicing moderation, because like any behavior that's worth keeping around, we may actually have to practice it to get good at it. There are some people who are naturally good at moderation, and they just go through their lives like, oh sure, I'll have a cookie, and they'll have 3 bites and they'll set it down and feel like, oh well, I got what I needed out of that cookie and I don't need any more. And if that's you, this video may not be necessary for you. So tip number 1 is just to imagine it. So imagine your life in the future, you're very healthy, you're doing everything that you think you should be doing, but you haven't completely cut everything out. You're able to, every once in a while, enjoy that favorite food. What does that look like for you? How often would you enjoy that favorite food? And I know this favorite might be different for everyone, or maybe you have a couple of things that kind of get in the way of what you feel would be your ideal healthy lifestyle, but you don't want to give them up completely. So how often do you think you should be having those things? What makes sense? Once a day, once a week, once a month, maybe only on certain occasions. Do you feel like that's something that you want to be able to let yourself have and enjoy? Imagine it. Just sort of fantasize about that life where you're enjoying a piece of cake and it's great and you feel zero guilt, but you only have that one piece of cake and maybe you don't have any more cake for another week. Whatever it is, give yourself a little imagination time and just sort of design the way you would want your life to look if you actually were able to embrace this idea of moderation. My second tip then is schedule it. Put it on your calendar. This will help in a couple of ways. First, it will make it finite. It will make it specific and limited. And it also might give you a little something to look forward to. Putting it on your calendar will make it more of an event, let's just say, so that it's something you can pay attention to, be mindful of, and actually do what you want to do with it. My third tip is probably going to be an obvious one, which is portion it. We all know that if you buy a food in the grocery store, the back of the package will tell you what a serving size is, and that serving size is probably way less than a normal person would consume, and it's certainly less than you're going to consume if you sit on the couch with a box or container of that food and just eat it absent-mindedly until you are done. So you might use that portion size as a guide, or you might choose another size. It doesn't really matter, but I suggest you actually portion an item from its container, put it in another container, walk away from whatever box or bag it came in, and then that is how much of that food you're going to eat. So you can choose, but portion it out. Now look, if you have to go back for more later, that's fine. That's a choice. You are a free person. You can do whatever you want. But giving yourself a finite portion can kind of set some parameters for you that can make this practice a little easier and, I think just a little bit more useful. Now we get into some of the tips that have to do with the actual event of the enjoying the eating of the food. So tip number 4 is notice it as you're eating. If you can eat without distraction, and yeah, look, so this is a tip that probably should be used for almost any time you eat, eating without distraction and paying attention to your food, but that may be unrealistic. But for this instance, where it's a food that you're specifically choosing to moderate, let yourself notice it while you're eating it. Notice the texture, the temperature, the taste, any smells, maybe even the sound of the food as you eat it. Just actually give yourself a chance to experience it as opposed to just scarfing it down. And then see what you see. How do you feel as you're eating this? What are you thinking about? What's going through your mind? Let yourself notice kind of everything that goes along with it. You might even notice things like, I don't really like this food that much. That's possible. If you have a food that you tend to binge on but that you don't actually enjoy when you pay attention to eating it, maybe you need to upgrade. My next tip is breathe. Try to breathe between bites as you're eating. Also, when you get to the end of your portion, take a breath. That moment of being done can sometimes be difficult. It can be challenging. Take a breath, let yourself experience that, and just sort of see what comes next. Maybe another breath. If you are breathing, you are still alive. You didn't die because you ate it. You didn't die because you stopped eating it. Breathe. My next tip is walk away. If you don't have anything else to do after you have your food that maybe sometimes you binge on, or maybe you're afraid you're gonna binge on it, you're putting yourself in temptation's way. So go take a walk around your block, or maybe just plan something afterwards. Call a friend. Maybe you have to go back to work and work is gonna engage you so you can't be eating anything else. Take a shower, I don't know, do something. Get out of the way of the experience and just put it behind you. Let it be. It was a thing you did. Great. Move on with your day. Tip number 7, and this may be an obnoxious one, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Journal. I had a cookie today, and I have mixed feelings. Today, I had a handful of jelly beans. Now, I don't know what my life is all about. If you're having a difficult time working through your issues with food, sometimes there's a lot of emotion that can come up around that, and we just need a place to put that, and sometimes writing it down is really just the best thing to do. I know you may not have time to do this after every time you eat a cookie, and that is totally fine, but there may be moments where you feel like you just need to have that experience of writing something down, noticing what you're feeling. It doesn't have to be super profound or anything like that, but just, maybe let yourself write stuff down every once in a while. not only does it give you a place to put your feelings, but the other thing is that if you are practicing this for a while, sometimes it's useful to kind of look back and see where you were so that you can see if you have been making any progress toward the goal of being able to enjoy things in moderation. All right, so tip number 8, become aware of your triggers. And I think you've probably heard this if you've ever talked to anyone about overeating or dealing with restrictive eating or dealing with any perhaps disordered eating patterns, is that you kind of need to start to become aware of what your triggers are, whether it's a certain feeling, like maybe when you're stressed or when you're bored or when you're angry, or whether it's a certain situation, like maybe just watching food commercials on TV is really something that triggers you to all of a sudden be impulsive and need to go and eat. It might be thoughts about trying on a bathing suit. It might be, I don't know, anything, but just start to be aware of what your triggers are. It's also possible that certain foods actually do trigger cravings in you. I have this experience sometimes where one bite is great, but then the one bite makes me want another bite. So in some ways that food itself may be a trigger. That doesn't mean you can't learn to enjoy it in moderation, but I think you just want to be aware if that's the case with that food. You may have that experience. You can't always control the external trigger, but you can control your response to it once you become aware of what those things are. So tip number 9 is analysis. You don't have to apply all of these tips every time you decide you're going to take a practice session of eating, but at some point you kind of want to analyze whether what you're doing is working or not. Well, I portioned it, but every time I did that, I just went back and got more. So maybe that didn't work for you. Maybe you only buy a certain size portion, or maybe that food just isn't the right one for you to be working with. If you chose a food that you just don't really like and you're not having a good experience with it, like, is that really working? What's working? What's not working? Check it out, figure it out, readjust, realign. Maybe you have to come up with some of your own ideas here too. But if you don't analyze what is and isn't working, like, that may never occur to you. Number 10, my final tip is reevaluate. And by this, I mean, well, a couple of things. But one is whether or not the value you are placing on these individual foods is really there for you. We all know that we eat for emotional reasons. We eat for this reason, for that reason, for the other reason. There, however, are some times where even if we're not hungry, it's okay to eat because food has value other than just as nutrition, which is why dietitians so often say, hey, no foods are off limit, enjoy them in moderation, enjoy your foods, blah, 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 blah. However, if you are placing a value on a food that it doesn't actually really have for you, you maybe just rethink that. There might be like a certain kind of chocolate brownie that really is worth it to you. But if you were to buy a box mix chocolate brownie at the store and bake it up, it may not hit that spot, right? So maybe you do need to like go to the nice restaurant and give yourself a fancy piece of cake as opposed to just unwrapping a package of something you buy in a convenience store. So reevaluate what foods you're choosing to put in your diet in moderation and whether they really are bringing value to your life. But if you try something and you realize that it is not adding any value to your life, then not to say you will never have that item again, but why are you bothering? Why are you making the effort to try to keep it in your life if you actually don't really care about it all that much? Evaluating, I think, is a little different than analysis because now we're placing certain judgment on the behaviors that we're choosing and we're deciding whether what we're doing is giving our life added value. If you do want to be living a healthy life, but also enjoying some of the things that you enjoy, then moderation is really going to be up your alley. They say that if you eat healthfully 80% of the time, then the other 20% of the time, you don't have to worry about it. And that is kind of true, because if we can get all of our nutrients into part of our diet, but we still have calories left over, then there's no reason you can't enjoy those calories any way you like. So the idea of moderation gives you the opportunity to enjoy food above and beyond its nutrition value. And I hope that you will, because food is really, really tasty. Now, just one quick caution, if there is something that for whatever reason, medical reasons, or for like known addiction reasons that are just not appropriate to bring into your life, some things are very triggering for some people, and so I don't want you to mess with that if that's something you've already solved for yourself and is in your past. Let me know what your thoughts are, and if you have any questions or comments, let me know that as well. I do hope you'll subscribe to my channel. Very often I do healthy home cooking in the kitchen, but today I just wanted to share this one for you because I think moderation is a very big part of our lives, although we do want to eat healthy meals as often as we can. So I hope this has been helpful. Let me know what foods it is that you are working towards bringing into your life in moderation, if there are any. And this may be something that you generally tend to restrict because you're afraid, or that you're generally overeating and you would like to be able to enjoy it in smaller portion size. Take care. Thanks so much for watching, and that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video.